Welcome to the Manufacturing Shakeup. We're your hosts, Ellen Feldman-Ornato
and Jenny Drescher. We're talking with dynamic women from across the manufacturing scene in Connecticut.
Listeners, have you ever been in a situation where you're the only one, where everyone around you has a certain agreed upon way of being with each other, and you recognize that you're the one that's out of sync? And it's not like the culture or climate of where you are is going to adapt to you, and you have to figure out how to make it work for you? That's the question that we're going to start with today with Amanda Wiriya from Wepco Plastics. Amanda, welcome to the Shakeup.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So
why do you looking through our show notes from our producer Gail? We immediately, both Ellen and I, could not help but notice a couple of really amazing things about who you are, which is that you have become a C-suite player, and when you first got into manufacturing, you were the only woman in the room, in a room full of people who were completely different from you. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So when I first got to Wepco, it was an all-male leadership team. I was the only female, and I actually started out just as an administrative assistant. I had stepped away from a larger corporate job, really wanted a break, wanted to be able to spend more time with my family. So came in, was happy to just push paper and clock out at the end of the day, but it didn't stay that way for long. They were very accepting. I had an opportunity to contribute. I saw where I felt like I could really contribute and help the company grow. So I stepped right in, and things just kind of evolved from there.
Mm-hmm. And what position do you hold now?
So I'm the vice president of operations.
Okay. And what does that mean?
It means that I take care of everything off of the floor. So I have a counterpart that handles all of our manufacturing everyday things, and then I handle all of our finances, human resources, sales and marketing, and our customer service.
Wow.
Wow.
A lot of hats. It's fun, though.
Many hats keeps us interested and learning and interesting.
Exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So when you were first there, and you were by yourself, I love that you have such a quote unquote happy ending to the story, that you've gone from being an administrative assistant that, came on to push paper, and now you're doing very different things. But what did you feel like when you first got there? And the reason we're asking, just so you know, is that a lot of our listeners and women that we've met through working in industry, everywhere we go, we meet somebody who is what we call the only, right? She may be the only woman. She may be the only young person. She may be the only fill in the blank. And your experience is really wonderful, and I think it could be of value to our listeners. What did it feel like to be the only? What was that like?
It was definitely challenging. We do have other females that work at Wepco, but they're all actually out on the floor. I was the only one really in that office environment, or in what we call our support department, so off of the manufacturing space. And especially for me, I knew nothing about manufacturing. I knew a lot about food and beverage, hotel management, absolutely nothing about how you make a plastic part or all the different intricacies that go into it. So every day I had to go up to a male colleague and go, hey, I need you to explain this to me, or I need help learning this, or what does this mean? So I think it was challenging on both sides for them to stop and slow down and explain things to me, but also on my side, where I felt that great need to keep up. I didn't want to have to keep hounding them and asking them questions. So I really did try to learn as much and absorb it. So next time, I knew that when we were in the room, I could keep up with the conversation a little bit more. And that was kind of my goal, is that every time I got placed in an all-male room or an all-manufacturing setting, that I could ask a little bit less, because I absorbed some from the last time we were there.
Ooh, humble, curious, and motivated.
Tried to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So, a question for you, because you mentioned you were in food service. What do you think in terms of mapping skills from your previous career what did you bring into Wepco Plastic that supports you? Like, and did you think that was obvious when you took that admin job that you had transportable skills?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't even think it that far out. I really just wanted to sit at that administrative desk and I wanted the 8 to 4 schedule for a little while and relax. But then when I got here, I could see those skills. And we were in the process of handing off to the second generation. So the owner's son recently had become president, I think about a year and a half before I got here. So they were really looking to change the way that they were doing business. So it was a great time for me to get here because I was able to look at things and go, well, what if we did it this way? Or what would you think about this? And they were very receptive to it. But I got to see how some of my past organizational training really did play into what we were doing at Wepco. Some of the past customer service skills, and then just also how we were aligning different processes on the floor that it also translated over to that.
Oh, yeah, because in hospitality, I mean, whether you're on the restaurant side or you're in the hotel side, or there's so many different ways that alignment piece really is 100% mappable into industry. That's really a great point. I'm curious about, it sounds like when you first got there, you made it a point to be a learner, right? You worked from what you knew, and you gave consistent action to, here's another piece that I know that I'm logging. Here's another piece that I know that I'm logging, and I'm bringing it around again, and I'm logging it and I'm bringing it around again. Is that part of how you lead now, where you continue to build from what you know? And I'm curious how that's serving you as a C-suite person now.
I still ask a lot of questions. They will tell you that in our leadership meeting. We have them every Wednesday, and I often have to go pause. I'm still the only female in the room, by the way, but I still have to say, okay, can we pause for a second? And can you explain that to me? Or I ask questions. I don't want to take for granted that I know something. And even if I know what the process should be, oftentimes I've realized over the years that processes evolve once they leave our hands. So even if it was supposed to be X, Y, and Z, if we don't stop and ask that question of, well, how do you do it? Or how did this transpire? The way that I'm thinking it might have happened might be drastically different from how it actually did. So it would require my support in a different way than if I just made that assumption that everything goes along as planned or along as we might have set forth.
Amen. At Boulder Company, we are giant fans of interrupting our assumptions and asking better questions, because we like to, in improvisation, there's a term, a note for one is a note for all. So when you're the person in the room who's asking, hey, can we clarify what this is all about and check our assumptions about whether or not that process is still the same, you're giving a note to everybody, because you're probably not the only person in the room who's asking that question.
Exactly.
Right. And I was going to ask, it says a lot about the environment of that group of senior leaders too, that there's a patience with and a desire for that pause for clarity. Right. Have you ever been in environments where that's not true?
Oh, absolutely. So we've tried to really work on that at Wepco, because regardless of your gender, when you bring a new team member on, especially in manufacturing, if you want to make the best product possible to your customer, you have to explain those smaller steps and not take for granted that someone knows what they are. So even when we come back in the room at a higher level, we try to, all right, is everybody on the same page? You know, maybe this was the mistake that we made, or we had an error on some process. So let's walk it back, start at step 1, and make sure that we're all on the same page on how each step occurred. And then there's different learning aspects to it too. There's going to be a different thing that I take away saying, oh, this is where my department really kind of failed the team. We should have done this better. We could have helped more here. While my counterpart that's out on the floor, he might not be responsible for that area. So he takes something else away from it that he needs to improve or can instill in his department.
Right. And from a departmental standpoint, what we see very often with our clients is there are gaps in understanding where assumptions are filled in and people keep rolling, even though they're operating on completely different assumptions of how something works or should be done, until it becomes a conflict. Right, because they're not rolling back to what's the least common denominator in the room in terms of understanding, and how do we build from there, right?
So it sounds like that. It sounds like Wepco has. It sounds like as a leadership group, Wepco has kind of got a lot of very specific practices in place to tap the brakes on that kind of behavior.
We do. We attempt to. We want to make sure that, everyone is transparent, that they feel comfortable being transparent, and that we try to really have that same page mentality. We try to be very open about, where we are financially, where our culture is, where we are with our jobs, down to the processes.
That is a very wonderful thing to hear about the way that the company is functioning, because that doesn't happen everywhere. So we have to give major kudos and bravo to Wepco for being very intentional about that, and about saying we because what you're talking about is displaying transparency, not just saying we believe in being transparency, but when you tap the brakes on assumptions and you ask better questions, you're actually putting transparency on display. You're demonstrating it for other people to be able to also engage in that behavior. How does that transparency translate across different levels of the organization, like all the way down to, your operators, for example?
We definitely try to start it at the top, because it takes a lot of humility to be that transparent. We still make a lot of mistakes here. We still make a lot of assumptions that lead to mistakes. So we participate in corrective actions a lot. We do them as a team. We discuss them every Wednesday. So we try to make sure as a leadership team that we set that example, and it trickles down, that if something is triggered and a corrective action needs to be done, that we're all doing them. So we're all participating in them, we're all doing them, and we're holding the processes accountable, not the people. So we try to really live by that. It's the process failed. You didn't fail us, but the process failed you. So let's look at how we can change that process so next time this doesn't occur again.
Which leaves the person whole and complete and available to problem solve, versus being, on the pointer end of this was your fault, which completely causes shutdown. And we see that so often. As Jenny said, I think you're sort of a unicorn in the way you're committed to operating. And it's great to hear. Super great to hear. One of the things that we also know about Wepco Plastics is you're very involved in emerging leadership, and you're very involved in associations that serve your industry. Can you say a little bit about why that's important to you as a person, and then, why that commitment is there? You said you and Charlie do a lot of that. Why is that?
We try to put our time where our mouths are. So instead of just advocating, every time we go to a room, we try to get involved and really participate, because we believe that, together as a group, when all of the manufacturers in Connecticut grow, we're going to grow together. So we really wanted to be dedicated to that. And we made a decision a long time ago that we wanted to get in those rooms. We wanted to help get these initiatives started. We wanted to put our time and put our effort there, because we believe that's going to make not just Wepco better, but everybody will benefit from it. And that's where that growth really comes from.
Oh, I love everything about that. On the Shake-Up, we are fond of calling Connecticut our small but mighty state. So your whole attitude about that, and Wepco's participation in really elevating Connecticut, is just near and dear to our hearts. I love that. I have to ask, what about the music degree? We saw that. We said, oh my God, we want to start asking her about what did she learn? Where did she study? Because we're both big fans of the arts, but moreover, the arts and sciences have so much to offer one another. How has music and your degree there informed what you do now as a leader and working in a completely different space?
So my music degree was an eighth grader's dream. That was what I decided I wanted to do at eighth grade. Picked out my college, knew that was where I wanted to go, and I was very grateful I got that opportunity. My mother worked very hard to make sure that she really fostered that dream for me. So that was what I chased. And then later you grow up and you kind of think and go, what am I going to do with this? So I ended up working in a hotel resort, and that transgressed up through the management role. I have not used my music degree beyond playing piano, but I had a lot of fun getting it. I've used the business aspects of it, but not the arts form so much. But when you come into our Wepco, you'll see the creative side of that a lot. I'm not sure that all of my male counterparts enjoy that, but we often do some little kooky things here. There's a lot of creative elements you'll find around the office, because I still love that creative side to it.
Absolutely. We need the creativity. Those two things must go together. They must.
Yeah, and my first memory of walking into Wepco, I think it was a WIM event, like a happy hour or something, and walking in and seeing Yoda on a 3D printer, which I'd never seen a 3D printer. And the fact that you walked us into that room and Yoda was sitting there and you're like, well, we make this, but we also make parts with it. So that was the first time that I had really encountered that level of technology in a smaller organization like yours. Right. I would expect
We try to have fun with it, and I need it broken down in a way that's fun for me. So I always challenge our designer. I'm like, can we make something fun? Because I don't know what most of our parts do. I'm like, so let's make something that the kids can recognize, or when we hold events like WIM, that we can get excited about, that everybody knows what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your work with emerging leaders, can we just sit on that for a second? What do you think are, if people out here are listening and they have either they themselves are starting to think about a career in manufacturing, or they're in a home where there are teenagers, what is it that we should be guiding young adults towards? What are the skills they need? Talk about emerging leaders and why that resonates with you so much.
I think we have to take the thought away where if you're coming to a manufacturing company, you have to make something with your hands. Because I do not make anything with my hands. They don't like me out on the floor. That is not the gift that God gave me. But I am great behind a computer, and I am great helping and supporting in other aspects. So I think we have to bring that awareness that outside of just physically being an engineer or a machinist or an operator, that there's sales, there's marketing, there's finance people that need to support. They need to help keep everything straight so that we know, are we making money? What should we do next? Our sales team can kind of give us that lead on our next branch of customers, and marketing needs to support that. So there's all kinds of creative elements and different pathways through that aren't just those technical fields that we think about so much.
Spoken like a musician. Right? I heard a lot of notes in there about the fact that, well, no, it's true though. I think that's a perfect example of how creativity serves us in manufacturing, because no musician is a one-note musician, and manufacturing is not a one-note job. There are so many facets, and you just pointed to that. So that is a critical success factor for any of us that may say, is manufacturing for me? What if I'm not an engineer? Oh, well, I can do lots of other things. So we are running down the clock on our episode today. I have 3 factors for us today. Our shake-up factors today, friends, are shake-up factor number 1. Amanda really worked from what she knew. So if you're in a different industry right now, maybe you're in retail, maybe you're in hospitality, maybe you're a professional gardener, and you're wondering, what in the world would I possibly be able to bring to the table? Start with what you know, because you just have no idea what kind of transferable skills are going to be able to really help you chart your path through your career in manufacturing. So work from what you know and be willing to explore those transferable skills. Shake-up factor 2 is, boy, let's not take anything for granted. Let's not take it for granted that we understand what somebody else means. Interrupting assumptions is a wonderful practice, and it's clearly leading to wonderful transparency at Wepco. And then I love shake-up factor 3, which is this idea that for our leaders out there, hear this one loud and clear, it is often the process that fails us, not the person. And I think as leaders, we can all learn to be paying a whole lot more attention to that, because we want to lift people up and look more carefully at processes than whether or not we're playing the blame game. So much wisdom today. Amanda Wiriya, you've just been a gem. I feel like I could talk with you all day.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
The Manufacturing Shake-Up is sponsored by the Connecticut Office of Manufacturing, produced by Maselli Productions and Gale Communications, and hosted by the Boulder Company.